Christies. Happy 2025. Can you believe we are into a new year? We are into a new Accelerate. And I love the design of this slide. It brings a lot of energy, a lot of excitement into the new year, which is where I right now am at. So welcome. Thanks for joining us. Let's get to it. We have a great lineup as we kick off this year's Accelerate 2025. And the focus for this month is really going to be gearing up with your mindset, being mindful, creating the life and the business that you want. So let's get into this. First of all, I want to welcome our guest, Chris M. King, executive witch doctor, which I love. I don't know, hopefully many of you remember Chris. He was at Expo with us 2 years ago. And he is an executive coach. He does a lot of really great motivational things with people. And what I love so much in talking with him last week, prepping for this morning, is he uses a lot of science behind kind of our roadblocks, like why we will or will not be successful, why we do or don't do things. And so I'm excited for our conversation this morning. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for
So good to
joining us.
see you.
I
Thanks
know
for
he's up
having me.
super early. You're in LA, aren't you?
I am, yeah. This actually, but my day starts at 4 a.m., so I'm
I
good.
love you. Of course it does. Of course it does. So, he's already at lunch right
Right.
now in LA, so we're good. But before he and I kick off our great conversation, just a couple of things to share as we really sort of move into Accelerate 2025 and some of the new things that are going to be in store for all of you. So first of all, we are going to just talk about the idea of just one thing. We're going to go into this in a second. And then we're going to talk about our intro to mindset. We get to chat with Chris, and then I'm going to be able to tell you really what's next and in store for you. So our focus this year, we know that there are a lot of things that we can be doing to be successful in business. And sometimes, and Chris can appreciate this, there's a lot going on in our minds. And so we don't always do the best job of figuring out what's that one thing right now that I should really be harnessing to move my business forward. So we are going to focus on this type of concept throughout the year, where there's lots of things you can be doing, but every month we're going to break down one area of focus, just one thing that you can be leaning into and really mastering to get your business to the next level, but also to fulfill yourself, right? Because this is a holistic approach to life. And monthly, you are going to, at the beginning of the month, have an all call like this. Then we get to dive in week 2 about all things related to social media. And then in week 3, I'm excited because we will be having partner vendors coming in to help you with different ways to look at your business. And then based off of so much of your feedback, every 4th week of the month, you're going to be doing an in-office roundtable. That is with your colleagues, face-to-face, in the office, doing great things. So we're really excited for this format this year. So I hope all of you in the chat are going to get ready to do it. So we talked a little bit about this just one thing, and I can't wait until Chris and I kind of get into our conversation and talk about how sometimes the mind is always chaotic, but it's learning about how to focus on some of the right things and knowing kind of how to navigate yourself forward. That's kind of the idea of this year and why we wanted to bring this concept of just one thing. It helps you avoid kind of making different decisions and thinking about so many things. We're going to kind of hone in and make sure that you can focus on something, and then more importantly, feel like you are making progress and accomplishing your goals that you set out for in this year. So remember, whatever you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. This is one of my favorite quotes. So we're going to get into this, and we're going to talk with the fabulous Chris right now and kind of dial into our topic this month, which is really focusing on your mindfulness and your mindset. So without further ado, I'm going to make us Chris full screen because we're both real good looking today. Both got ourselves ready for this Monday. So welcome, Chris. Thanks again. And it's so nice to have you back. We know that our topic right now is being mindful and mindfulness, right? And kind of how to get there. So I'm gonna just go right in. Mindfulness, being mindful. How do people, like, what is the first step for people to be able to do this successfully?
Yeah, and thank you again for having me. I love working with y'all. So, I would say when it comes to mindfulness, it's really about awareness. What we say in this work is until there's awareness, there's no choice. And I know mindfulness is kind of a buzzword. It's like, well, what does that really mean? It's simply to be aware. I will tell you right now, the number one thing when it comes to awareness is your subconscious desire to block it. I mean,
Mhm.
that's it. A lot of times we think about, we need to do something or add something. A lot of times it's actually what we need to stop doing or take away in order to get us what we want. And so the first thing is, how am I actively stopping myself from becoming aware of something? And I'll tell you, it's through the judgment that you are bad or wrong for having this kind of thing. And if you can get out of that construct and recognize there's nothing wrong with you, you're not bad, you're not wrong, you're not screwed up, none of this stuff, then there's a willingness to look at it. And once you have that willingness, your awareness is going to go up.
I love this. So, and it's kind of this idea, I think, to being open to really sort of like all of your thoughts, right? Because I think
Mhm.
we self-sabotage so easily, right? I think we don't give ourselves enough grace. We don't allow ourselves to make mistakes. I think we can just be so critical of ourselves. And so I think, from hearing this, it's almost like let it all in, like let it all stream in and don't create such judgment on your own self.
Yeah, judgment is separation, right? Like the idea of judgment, like that is wrong, this is right, that is bad, this is good, right? That and the way that we make ourselves wrong or bad for whatever it is. But if you are separated from the thing, you are disconnected to where you can't affect it. And so if you can release the judgment, now that doesn't mean you like the situation, that doesn't mean you like the dynamic, it doesn't mean that we're going to allow it to continue or that we condone it. It means I'm going to let go of the judgment that I'm holding against it in service to reconnecting with that thing, because that's the way we can affect it and change it.
Wow.
You cannot affect something through judgment. You
Yeah.
cannot course correct through judgment. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah. I mean, this is being really self-aware and allowing yourself to kind of just be open to almost reprogramming your brain and how it works,
Mhm.
I think too. Um,
Yeah, I mean, here's the way to know if you're in judgment. If you're using the word should or shouldn't, you're probably in judgment. I should be doing this. I shouldn't be doing that. That shouldn't be that way. When you start shoulding all over the place, you're probably in judgment, right? And
oh
so
my God. In the
that's the
chat, how
key.
many of you should all over the place all the time?
Oh, and I just tell you, Amy, 80% of our clients on the B2C side have been professional women, and the level of shooting on themselves it's once we get that out of the way, game changer. Game changer.
Oh my God, that's so great. John just said America 2025 is shooting. That's so great. So again, when we talked last week a little bit, I loved this idea. You talked a little bit about, people contracting or living in a place of scarcity
Yeah.
and, actually talking really scientifically even about kind of that flight or fight mentality that
Mhm.
our body is programmed to have. And so I want to talk a little bit about that because, like one of the things that like helps me move the needle sometimes is I tell myself to think less and just do, right? I
Mhm.
laugh, but Kevin Van Eck and I use the Mel Robbins 5 4 3 2 1, like
Mhm.
just do it. And I do so much better sometimes when I don't have enough time to overthink the consequences or what will or will not happen. And I think that, most of us on this call do that or fall into that trap. But tell me, because I loved you talked a bit about this contraction versus, didn't you say expansion, and that we
Yeah.
live in two different spaces. So can you share that with our group? Because I loved just thinking about that a little bit differently.
All right. Well, I'm either going to get really woo here or really scientific. So depending on what lens you want to run it through. But what we're talking about is like an energetic, excuse me, an energetic polarity. All right. It's very binary. You are either in the energy in the field of expansion or you're in the energy, the field of contraction. Even if you're holding static, relatively, you are in contraction because the universe is expanding, right? So you cannot grow your business from contraction. You cannot expand from contraction, right? These are just diametrically opposed. You cannot grow from scarcity. You cannot thrive from survive, right? Contraction, scarcity, thrive, survive, that's all tightly held. But if you are in thrive, expansion, abundance, that's the energy that you need to be in. Now, that doesn't mean you need to go crazy and spend money and throw it all over the place, right? It does mean you need to get out of that contracted energy, and you can feel it. Like everybody right now, like right now where you are. Am I feeling expansive? Am I feeling tight and contracted? Like you can feel it in your human system.
Throw it in the chat, people. Are you in contraction or expansion? And maybe
Right?
by the end of this call, your answer will be different.
Right? And no judgment. Like it's fine, right? If you are like if you can release like, oh, well, I should be in expansion, but I'm in contraction and I'm judging that. Let that go. It's like this is just the reality of where I am on the map right now. Cool. Good to know. I need to
But
know
it's
this.
awareness, right? Step
Because
one.
right, until there's
Right?
awareness, there's no choice.
I love it. We have a lot of mixture, contraction,
Right? So
expansion.
right. So
It's like I don't know.
so where do
So
you feel it, right? Where do you feel that
somebody just
contraction? Breathe some
said,
air into it.
how do I switch to the other? So that's a great idea. Like, what are some, so you coach a lot of individuals. You probably see so many similar scenarios, given that you're on this call with a lot of business professionals, a lot of people who are their own CEO of their own business. So there's a lot of pressure because at the end of the day, it's all on them to be successful, right? So, and there is oftentimes that creates that scarcity or that fear because of that pressure. When working with some of your clients, what are some of the tools or tactics that you work with them on to be able to move people from fear or contraction kind of more into an action,
Mhm.
expansion, energy mode? What are some of the things that you guys do or talk about?
Yeah, that's a great question because the brain here, this is really interesting actually, because the body doesn't know the difference between excitement and fear. Like enthusiasm and fear from a neurochemical standpoint, from a
Kind of the same
physiological standpoint,
energy.
it's just the same neurochemistry. It's the same physiology. So if you can polarize all the fear of, oh no, this terrible thing might happen, if you can like live into the vision of what you want to achieve. Instead of the what if and then negative statement, it's the what if positive statement. You start thinking into that vision and say it to yourself, even out loud, say, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited. Like when you push that out kind of into the universe that way, because your body and your brain are already, chemically set up for success, it can polarize that. And so it moves you out of contraction into expansion.
I love it. It reminds me kind of, so back during COVID, Kevin and I had offices side by side each other, and we were like the only ones really kind of going in for a long
Mhm.
time. And we kind of made this fun sort of joke or rule that it didn't matter what your morning was, because sometimes I'd have grouchy kids, and he was like, this is why I'm never going to have kids when I tell him the stories. But you always have your own crap in the morning, right? And you're coming in from your own space. But our rule was we came in and we had to, like, whoever was in second would come in and be like, hey, and we would force ourselves to create this energy, and it
Mhm.
was funny because it really sort of anchored our day. We had more fun. I think we were more creative as a result of it. And honestly, it didn't matter how bad my morning was. I kind of created that energy, right?
Mhm.
So I think sometimes we can't do this alone, right? So, I mean, do you recommend like getting out of, I say I have to get out of here sometimes and get
Mhm.
with other people and find like-minded people who carry the same type of energy?
I would say that energy is everything. Like
Mhm.
everything. Even if you're sitting at a desk that's like 95% empty space, it's just compressed energy. And energy operates in frequencies. And it is really important who you spend time with. If you're going to spend time with a lot of negative people, that's going to affect you. It's like that what's that saying, if you hang out with five millionaires, you'll be the sixth. If you hang out with five losers, you'll be the sixth. Like that's just the way that works. So,
That's so true.
and joy, energy, all these the aligned polarity that you're looking for, it's not something that you have or don't have, it's something that you generate or don't. And
Mhm.
that's up to you. Like you have full control over this, and what we say in this work is how you relate to the issue is the issue.
Is there anything that you have people do kind of in the morning first thing? Because I do feel like kind of how you start your day creates a path towards how your day can continue to grow, or continue to be successful. Is there anything that you do, like when it's, again, sort of tactics of getting people into action? Do you have any recommendations? Like, do you believe in a morning routine? Are there certain things that, people, you referenced
Mhm.
something about like saying something 3 times. I'm just curious if there's something when you're coaching others that you kind of start following or participating in that could be successful for them.
Well, my job is to make sure that they understand the science behind what we're doing because, like a lot of people say, this is the way to do it. There's no one way to do it, like ever. Nietzsche, right? You have your way, I have my way, but as far as the right way, the only way, the correct way, there's no such thing, right? So, some people will say, oh, you got to get up super early and charge into the day, and that's the way to be successful. Yeah, for some. For other people, their circadian rhythms don't work that way. I mean, they'll do their best work in the afternoon. It just depends on where they are. So the question is, what do I need to do based on my human system? There are certain things that are going to work. I will tell you this much, and here's the science is solid. How you apply the science is wildly up to you. So that's why there's no paint by numbers thing. So something like, look, having a proactive instead of reactive mindset, feeling like you run your day instead of your day running you. Because of the way this affects your neurochemistry and your psychology, well, that's what's going to do it. How you get yourself into that mode could be any number of ways.
I love it. How many out there? I'm actually so excited that you sort of have broken this idea. It's like, look, we read so many books. We're constantly like, what is the right way of doing things? And I think when you are reading something that says you have to have this particular morning routine or you have to do, there's absolutes, right? It creates this mentality of feeling like a failure right away if you don't sort of fall into that. So what
Right.
I love that you're saying, and I think would resonate to a lot of people out there, is it doesn't matter how you start your day. It kind of goes with what's going to work for you, but it's did you start it? Was it intentional? And it sounds like you're saying you really focus on, are you being proactive, right?
Yeah, are you in the energy, the mentality, the mindset, the framework of the outcome that you're looking for? And it's very binary. It's either aligned or misaligned. You're either in or you're not. The C key on the piano is C. It just is, right? And there's no debating that. If it's out of tune, then it's not C anymore. And so are you aligned or misaligned? And that's the question is, am I going to this in a way that is going to produce or likely to produce to the best of my abilities to guess, right, that the outcome that you're looking for? Because the number one influencer to the outcome of any meeting, any engagement, any phone call, any presentation is the energy you bring into it.
Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer of that. I say to my girls, do you want to be the energy that comes into the room, or do you want to be the energy, or you want to be the energy sucker of the room,
Right.
right? Because there are those people that, can come on in, they say one thing and it's like, whoo, mood has totally changed.
Hmm.
So energy, I agree, is super, really powerful. And obviously it creates a big impact on our mindfulness, right? So, it's like being aware of our energy, right? And let's say I am somebody though that struggles with having positive energy. And what are some of the things, I get, again, step one is being aware that I'm even that person, right? Being mindful
Hmm.
or aware of it. But if I'm aware of it, that isn't always enough. Like, are there any things that I can be doing? And this is kind of for all of us because, there are times when we do have bad energy, even if it's just sitting with ourselves, kind of that negativeness comes over it. So what are some of these things or steps, because it isn't always you just do it once. There's kind of a
Hmm.
consistent path of acting or behaving or awareness that can really impact change. So what are some of the things that you're doing with people to get them out of that space, because I'm guessing you coach people that are
Yeah, I mean, again, there's so many ways. It's like, look, I mean, it's going to sound silly, but go sit in the corner, give yourself a timeout, right? right? Like sometimes you just need that. Maybe you need a day off. Maybe you need a day where it's like, you know what? I'm gonna take this, call it a mental health day. I'm
Mhm.
gonna give myself permission. Here's the thing, and God love you ladies for doing this, but in my experience, women seem to get on this thing where they really feel like they have to power through. And let me give you another word for power through. Self-betrayal, right? Like nothing good comes from self-betrayal ever, right? I deal in very few absolutes. This is one of them. Nothing good comes from self-betrayal. And so give yourself the dignity of taking that time of doing, call it self-care or whatever. But you're not going to do yourself any favors by going into self-betrayal and pushing through. I get it. Sometimes there will be those times when you got to stack up and do what you got to do. And the idea that you should be able, there's that word, to, of course you can work 60 hours a week and deal with all the stresses at work and the husband and the kids and the house and your mom and have 104 fever and get 4 hours of sleep a night. Of course you should be able to do all that. Like, no, no, you shouldn't. That is not with us, the human system's tolerances. That's not the way that works. So every now and again, it's like, look, what is true here? How do I get myself in a place where I am not taking myself out of my human system's tolerances? Because
Mhm.
nothing good comes from that.
So it's really, I mean, a lot of that is setting boundaries. And I think we're in a business that is, being in real estate, you're so reactive, you're constantly, oftentimes can be reacting to a client's immediate needs, right? So it's recognizing that maybe creating some safe boundaries isn't going to lose a client, right? I also think it might create more respect that they realize that your time is valuable. So,
Mhm.
how do you help people kind of create those boundaries, and create some momentum really sort of like in their business?
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, how you feel about yourself overall will impact your life, but there's also a piece of like, how am I really strategic in making sure that I'm really good at building a career and a successful business as a CEO?
Your relationship to everyone and everything in this world is derived from your relationship to you. And
Mhm.
so boundaries is a tough one, and it is one of the things that we train in a lot. Because the same way that good fences make good neighbors, good boundaries make good relationships. And if you are violating your boundaries, then guess who else is going to? Everyone. So it really does become a function of that. Um, here's a good way to measure it. Notice when you are tolerating something. Like
Mm.
it could be something as simple as being at a lunch that you don't want to be at. It could be talking to somebody you don't want. It could be I've been on this phone call for half an hour and but when you are tolerating anything, you are outside the wheel of consent.
Oh my God, say that again,
Yeah,
please.
if
When
you
you
don't
are
know what the wheel is consent is, look this up. But look, I mean, and if I frame this in a dating situation, this gets real easy real quick, right? So if you are tolerating anything, if you're sitting at a bar having a drink with somebody that you don't know, you are outside the wheel of consent. And you can feel it. Every one of you knows. You know what that feels like in your human system, right? I refer to human beings as human systems, like mind, body, spirit, integrated system. And you know when you are outside of your system's tolerances in that moment. And if you
Yes.
are tolerating anything, you're outside the wheel of consent.
Isn't it crazy? It is, and you talking about this, it is so true how our body really does tell us these things. It's like you said, you can feel fear, you can feel excitement, you can feel when you're tolerating, right? When you don't want to be doing something. It's amazing how we oftentimes ignore those signals, but how critical those are, you know, on
Oh,
the
and you have so many mechanisms to override your system. You have so many ways to convince yourself to do that. And it's never okay. Self-betrayal is just not okay. And what happens to our relationships? If I go into self-betrayal for someone else, I'm not gonna be very happy with them, right? Like this is gonna create friction in my relationship. I will tell you, here's the problem with friction. Money loves speed. Success, however you measure it, loves speed. More friction, less speed.
Hmm. Interesting. More friction, less speed.
Yeah, speed is a function of horsepower. It's also a function of weight and friction.
Hmm.
You remove the weight, I mean, I used to ride motorcycles and we race these things and it was all about weight. I
Yeah,
mean, that thing weighed 370 pounds. I'm 140 pounds soaking wet. My buddy's like, how come you always win? I said, because you weigh 80 pounds more than I do. You're never going to beat me. You're never going to beat me.
totally.
It's not
It's
going to work.
easy. It's really easy. So
Yeah.
I have a great question from the chat. So how do you get off the wheel?
Oh, the hamster wheel? You got
And
to
then
want
here,
it.
how do you balance need to do for our business with those things sometimes being outside of our wheel of consent?
I, Starting with the end in mind can be really helpful. Like having a very clear vision of what success looks like for the day, for the week, for the month, because that becomes the measurement. Like, how does this that I'm considering engaging in relate to making that happen?
Hmm.
If it doesn't, or if you can't quite see it, maybe this isn't supportive.
Mhm.
Maybe this is, in my world we call it drag. It's creating drag in my life, and that's what slows me down. I mean, I tell you what, here's um, drag has a sound. And it's very easy, drag friction. It has a sound. It's when you get a text message from that person or a phone call or whatever, and you go, ugh, that's friction.
That's
That's
drag.
drag.
That's drag.
As soon as you hear that, feel that, you're like, oh, wait a minute. This.
All right, so if somebody feels that, right? Then
Mhm.
what can they do like to immediately change that?
Well,
Like you have to
yeah,
become self-aware, right? And then
that requires some intention and some planning and some strategy. I frame this in like heavier than air aircraft. They're in order for airplanes to fly, they have to balance four forces: weight, thrust, lift, and drag. This is my old man engineer coming out. Okay, but so on an airplane, thrust is provided by the engines that pushes it forward. The lift is provided by the wings that picks it up off the ground. Weight is everything the aircraft is carrying, and plus the aircraft itself. And anything that slows it down is drag, right? Wind resistance. That's why they fly so high. There's less wind resistance, less drag. The wheels get tucked up into the belly, less drag. Everything in your business, everything in your life is one of or a combination of those four forces. So you've got, your engines, that's maybe your passion projects, the things that push you forward, your sales goals, whatever. Your lift, that's, the things that light you up, your recreational activities, your hobbies. You have weight, the things that you chose, you got a mortgage, a car payment, anything that slows you down is drag. I mean, if you have kids, they're all of the above all the time. So it's, you're balancing that. Right. My kid, they lift me up, they drive me forward, they drive me crazy. It's minute to minute, right? But it becomes a function of designing your day, your life. How do I reduce the drag? And again, there's no one answer for this.
Mhm.
Identifying it is the first thing. Like, you got to know.
I love that because I was thinking like this is great and it's like okay so people get off of this call kind of what is the first actionable step for them and I almost think you put those four things up somewhere on the
Mhm.
wall or down on a piece of paper and you had just said it how do I eliminate the drag so people if there's anything else we walk away from this morning I think that's the first thing that we should write down is how do we get rid of or lessen or eliminate the drag and that's kind of the idea too behind this whole program this year is there's so many things you can choose to do. So how do we hone in on the thing that matters the most, right? So talking about thrust, lift,
Mhm.
drag, and weight, figure out what moves you forward, as you had said. What's the thrust? You guys all have your business goals. What's the lift? This is the why. Why are you doing this, right? What is the drag? And then what's the weight? The weight is just everything that,
Everything that you've chosen to take with you, right? The things that you consciously bring into your life, right?
yes, yes. I absolutely love that. So as we wrap, are there any other actionable thoughts or a pro tip? Somebody's getting off of this call. What's one sort of nugget or thing that they can take away that could maybe make a powerful impact in their day today, February 3rd?
I would say, and I do this with everybody, is I challenge everything they think is reality. Because as you know, Amy, I don't deal in possible. I deal in impossible. I deal in crazy, wild moonshot. No way could that actually happen kind of things. You know, growing your business 20% this year is really uninteresting to me. Growing it 5x, 10x, now that has my attention. So the first thing is you've got to understand that human beings create, validate, and recreate the reality of their understanding. What if you're wrong? Like, this is the first thing I say to everybody is like, well, give me all the reasons you can't have it and give me all the reasons it can't be done and all this stuff. I said, well, yeah, okay, great. What if you're wrong? There was something you said earlier, and I don't remember what it was now, but it hit a chord for me. There's something called the Bannister Principle. And some people know this. It's the 4-minute mile guy. Through the 1900s and the mid 1900s, early 1900s, the world was obsessed with the idea of seeing a human being run a mile in under 4 minutes. And they said, it's not possible. It'll kill you if you do it. And this guy, May of 1954, Roger Bannister, pulled it off. His record, after decades of people trying to do this, his record lasted 46 days.
Oh, wow. 46 days.
46 days.
I was going to say 46 years.
Right? No, 46 days. Because the moment he crossed the finish line, people went, oh, wow, it is possible. Once you start to think it's possible, you will produce that reality.
Wow. Isn't that amazing? You're so right, though. It's like the minute you know somebody, you can do something, then it changes everything.
Yeah.
Well, I could continue talking to you all morning. You could probably
Oh, I could do this all. Getting
help to
me to
change
talk
my
is
life.
easy, right?
There's
Getting
so
me to
many
shut up.
things.
That's a whole
So
different
many.
thing.
But what I do want to share with the audience as we wrap is I'd love to actually share Chris's info in case you want to learn more about what he offers. He does kind of one-on-one coaching. He's got a great program that he's doing kind of in a group environment. But even if you are following him on LinkedIn, you are getting these nuggets. He does these amazing videos, and I just think that when you follow and engage with people like Chris, those little nuggets that you get are just some of those things that help you take the action and the step that you need to move forward. Because I think, again, as we're wrapping today, this is about being mindful about what you want to accomplish, mindful about what your goals are, mindful about the drag in your life, and maybe some of the things that you can do to get rid of that drag that frees you up to move a little bit faster. Because as Chris said, speed is what money and success likes.
Success loves speed, loves it.
Yes. So let's not slow ourselves down. Let's figure out some of the ways that we can be more intentional and actionable this year. So please be sure to connect with Chris. Chris, it's been such a joy and an honor, and I really appreciate you taking the time with us this morning. Just a reminder of what's up next, everybody. Next week, we've got social media, scrolling with a purpose. I love that. How to scroll, and instead of just going mindlessly, how can we actually have this maybe be making an impact in our business? And then we've got taking control of your taxes as an independent contractor. That's an exciting topic for week 3, but it's real, whether we like it or not. That is a reality. And then you've got your roundtable in week 4. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Chris, thank you again. Can't thank you enough. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you all soon.